Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we're on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Daryl Amy.
If you love the Selling from the Heart podcast, then you know how much we value authentic leadership and building relationships with heart. But here's the thing, great leadership doesn't stop with sales. It starts at the top with CEOs who inspire trust, create meaningful cultures, and lead with purpose.
That's why we're excited to invite you to get involved with the Culture from the Heart podcast. On Culture from the Heart, we celebrate CEOs who are transforming their companies by putting people first. And we're asking you to help us find them.
Do you work for an incredible leader? Know a CEO who builds culture from the heart? Nominate them to be interviewed on the show. Together, let's spotlight the leaders who make businesses thrive by leading authentically.
So head over to cultureFromTheHeart.com to submit your nomination today. Because when leadership starts with the heart, culture and success follow. Hello and welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Daryl Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
Hey, all kinds of things. Another great day here at the Selling from the Heart podcast studio. I can't wait to bring on our guests. We're going to have a terrific time here today, Daryl.
I think we're going to discover the unexpected power of setting boundaries. Our friend Sheri Jacobs is here, and this is going to be phenomenal. Thanks for joining us. If you're new to the Selling from the Heart podcast, welcome. You've joined a growing community of sales professionals that are dedicated to being genuine, being authentic, building trust. That's what we call Selling from the Heart. And this growing community in every industry all over the world is so fun to hear from our friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to give a special shout out to Katie Tate. And she just recently started following us here at Selling from the Heart. I appreciate you. Continue on this great journey you're on as a sales manager. The best is yet to come.
I love it. We're cheering you on and you're not alone. Well, hey, today's guest brings a perspective that most sales professionals don't often hear, but absolutely need. Our friend Sheri Jacobs is a wildlife photographer who has photographed wildlife on every continent, spending her career immersed in environments where trust can't be forced, outcomes can't be rushed, and presence matters way more than control. These experiences have led her to write this powerful new book, The Unexpected Power of Boundaries, a message sales professionals and sales leaders need to hear right now. In the wild, clear boundaries don't restrict movement. They create safety, focus, and trust. And the same is true in sales. When people know where they stand, feel respected, and are encouraged to take thoughtful risks, performance, innovation, and growth follows. Sheri Jacobs, welcome to Selling from the Heart. It's awesome to have you here.
Thanks, Daryl and Larry. It's great to be here.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you investing in us. We're going to have a terrific time, Sheri Jacobs.
That's right. We're going to set some boundaries. And one of the first things that we're going to do, though, is ask you the question we ask every guest on Selling from the Heart. And that is, what does Selling from the Heart mean to you?
Sure. So as you already mentioned, I have a new book, The Unexpected Power of Boundaries. And I connect that back to what the Selling from the Heart means. So the fastest way to build trust and performance isn't more freedom, but it's clear boundaries so that you can take risks, so that you can show up, be human, follow through, understand what people want, and then be authentic in how you sell to that.
Oh, I really like this, Sheri. So what I heard was clear boundaries, loud and clear. So walk us through, what's clear boundaries look like?
Yeah, I love to start with this unusual example. So there was a study done by a landscape architect who was just curious about how kids play and what makes them more creative, innovative, or even successful in their play. So she had a group of preschool kids go to a park, and this park had the playground and it had a big, wide, expansive space, but there was no fence or boundary around it. And what she observed is all the kids stayed on the playground. They did exactly what was prescripted, right? The slides, the swings, that's how they played. No one ventured, even though they could have. The next week, she had the same group of kids go to a different park in town. And this one had a fence that went all the way around it. And as soon as they got to the park, the kids ran and they went all the way to the fences because there's safety and security in knowing how far we can go. And when you know that, that's when the kids were more creative and innovative in their play and having more joy and having more fun. And that same lesson can be applied in all areas of work, especially in sales, right? So knowing how far you can go, where are the fences, but then allowing the play to be unscripted, like allowing for some freedom for people to just explore and see what works by listening more to the customer and by understanding where their needs are.
Oh, that's fascinating. So setting boundaries. Well, I think for our listeners, and I'm asking for a friend, what is a boundary? Like, how would you define that boundary? I can see it plainly in terms of a fence around a playground. What does that practically look like in real life?
Right. Such a good question. Okay. How do I connect the dots there? So one is defining some of the deal rules, right? So it could be discount guardrails or approval lanes or non-negotiables. It could be what good looks like, right? From the ideal customer, what problems are you solving and which ones you aren't, so that you're not spinning your wheels as if you're working in sales. It could be defining relationship rules, right? Response times, follow-up promises, no ghosting, right? Those are all simple things, sound obvious, but they're not always in place and they're not always clear.
You know what's interesting about this? And I'm sitting here listening to what you're saying. I'm like going, gosh, how many times have no boundaries been set? And I'm thinking about this shared through a sales lens for a moment. No boundaries are set around some of the things you're just saying, and the deals go off. They veer off the right lane. They stall. Something catastrophic, however you all want to define it, happens somewhere throughout the process, but only if we would have had these boundaries set in the very beginning. Something tells me some of this stuff may not happen.
It's so true. So there are two different areas. One is constraints. Constraints are things that you may not be able to put there, right? That is constraints that are just exist, in terms of what you're selling, who you're selling to. There may be some constraints. Boundaries are ones that you can agree upon and say, this is a space I get to play where I get to be creative. So we need both. We need constraints so that we understand, how we can be successful and where are the areas of what we can and can't do, what we can sell, how we could be authentic, right to what your podcast talks about, right? Selling from the heart and that authenticity and building that trust. But then there's a separate area, and those are the boundaries that you put in place where you get to experiment, where you get to try different things, because otherwise people will continue to do the same types of sales tactics, the same things they've done for years, even if they're no longer working, because they don't know where they can experiment or test new ideas.
I think that's for our friends who are sales managers listening in. I remember, the days when I was a sales manager, I had a line of people at the door waiting to ask me questions. And just I'm reflecting on this going, you know what? I wonder how much better my life would have been if I had set boundaries and we had some open discussions about, hey, here's what you can do. Here's what you can't do. Here's the fence around the playground for all of this. So go out and explore. You don't have to ask me every single time for every small, question or anomaly. If we'd set those boundaries, seems like my job as a leader would have been much better.
Absolutely. So a great example I have, although this may seem not connected, but I'll connect the dots for you, is from one of my favorite commercials of all times. And if I were to say, what is the brand that put out the commercial that says, you're not you when you're hungry? Do you know the next line? What the candy bar is? So it's Snickers.
Yeah, I know it's the Snickers. I don't remember the rest of the line. Well, now I'm hungry.
Yeah, if you're not you and you're hungry, Snickers satisfies. What's amazing about that campaign that a lot of people don't know, came out in 2010. And it was a Super Bowl ad, one of the top Super Bowl ads of all times. I'm an IU fan. I just watched the IU play. And if you ask me about any commercials during that game, I can't tell you a single one. But when I bring up that commercial and I show the Betty White commercial, everybody remembers it. Now, the reason it's memorable is because it has this universal truth. You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies. What they don't do is they don't sell on the features because that's hard. There's a lot of competition. They sell on the benefit, the problem, and the solution. So now let me take it a step further. One of the things they did was they came up with that idea, that concept, but then they gave it to creative agencies all around the world. And those creative agencies could create any campaign that they wanted with it. So that's why they allowed the freedom within the boundary. And so they had really creative ideas throughout, like in Costa Rica, I think it was, where they had DJs on the radio stations playing music that wasn't in their genre. Like, they would have classical playing rap or something different. And then they would get back on, they'd say, sorry, I'm not me when I'm hungry. I just had a Snickers bar. But that creativity was different per country. What happened is they found 16% growth in global sales in 1 year and became the top selling candy bar and still hold that spot. I love that story because they set a boundary, but then allowed that creativity within it and said, you can play within that space. I also love it because they didn't sell on features, they sold on the benefits, right? They said, this is a problem and our candy bar is the solution. So I love that example is how a sales manager or a team could say, this is the space, this is our message. What could you do within that space to be more creative?
Hey, I like this. How can we roll this out? Great story. How can we roll this out in real life? Like if I'm a salesperson and I'm calling on XYZ company, and let's just say it's that first call, or I'm into it, maybe several calls. How do I bring in this concept of boundaries? How would I roll this out so it all makes sense?
Great question. So I love to say, separate the what from the how. So before we talk about the solution, what outcomes matter most, right? What makes this a win 90 days from now? What constraints are real? What budget constraints, timing, other things? And then once you've discovered the what, then you can say, cool, now we could talk about the how. So, that's the area where you can explore and you can roll it out. People often jump to the how before they've determined what the what is. So that's one way that I find that a lot of sales teams can really kind of break it down and do the boundaries. Now, I have another example from a bank that wanted to get people to save more money. And so they created the what's. They had 3 strict rules around what couldn't change. They said, we're going to still make people use the debit card, no new technology. They said, we're not going to change people's spending habits. And we're going to make it frictionless, right? Those are 3 good things for all salespeople, right? Right? Make it frictionless, make it easy. We're not going to expect them to change for us. And we're going to use what exists today so we don't have to spend more money. And this was Bank of America, and they came up with the Keep the Change program. And that program was tremendously successful. They first defined the what, and then they went to the how. So, specifically, you have to think about your sales team. What are you selling? What are the what's before you jump to the solution for the how?
One of the things I'm thinking about, Sheri, is sales process and scripts and all of that. So you kind of have 2 camps. One is like, this is the process. You do not deviate from it. We create these robots. And obviously, in response to that, we've got probably the majority of sales teams now, which are like, we're not going to force you to do a script, and it's just kind of free for all, do what you want. I can see this middle ground, or this higher ground, if you will, of saying, okay, you know what, we're not going to give you a script. Maybe we're going to give you some talking points. We're going to give you something that's going to give you some boundaries so you can dance inside the lines. But we're also just not going to leave you, to go, hey, figure out whatever you want to say. And when we run sales index analysis and we get, reports back from sales teams on, hey, tell me your value proposition or your elevator pitch, we see most of it's Wild West, right? It's like all over the place. But I think we need to bring it back to the middle, and boundaries might be the answer here.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I have worked with teams on is there's an area around that a lot of people talk about is creating a culture where it's safe to listen to the customer, get that feedback, incorporate that into what you're going to do, right? And then test things, right? That's creating a culture where you can experiment and even maybe fail at some of the things that don't work, but learn from them. And then you've got organizations that have very clear boundaries, but they don't allow for any experimentation, any kind of, look, here are the scripts, where can I try different things? So what I found is when you put those two together, when you have that, we have a culture, we have an environment where if you're learning, if you're hearing things from the customer and you want to change, make modifications to the script, but we have very clear boundaries in place, that's actually where the biggest success comes from. And so that's that top quadrant, which I explained. But when you have very clear boundaries, but no experimentation, no freedom within it, then it's a compliant zone. Mm-hmm. And when you have no boundaries and you have no experimentation, no freedom there, that's the fear zone. People are just going to work. They're going to do the work. They're going to come back and you're not going to see the growth.
Okay, I'm going to ask this. I just have to. But yeah. Is there such thing as a boundary with an asterisk by it? I don't know why that's popping into my head, but I'm sitting there listening where you're going. I'm like going, okay, someone's saying, okay, I could buy into this boundaries, but there's an exception. I say, okay, there has to be an asterisk to a boundary. Does that exist, or am I just trying to make up something?
Yeah, great question. So, there are a couple of things that I look at, and this may not be what you were thinking, but when you ask that question, what pops in my mind is, can boundaries be moved?
Okay, yeah.
Right? So, yes. And the answer is yes, because sometimes things are outdated. Sometimes we have set up, these are the clear boundaries, but over time, things have changed. And the environment has changed, the product has changed, how sales happens changed, the buyers changed. And so the asterisk to me is when do we move the boundaries? When do we need to go back and look at things and say, wait a minute, this isn't working, and these boundaries in place are actually limiting. That's when the asterisk really says, all right, let's look at them again.
Wildlife photography. So this is this is the first time in 10 years we've had a wildlife photography expert on the Selling from the Heart podcast. I absolutely love it. I'm so fascinated. And Larry and I got to see one of your photographs at the beginning of the show. It was so beautiful. What did you learn as a wildlife photographer that could be helpful to somebody in leadership or sales?
Well, first, let me start with a fun fact. So I didn't start as a wildlife photographer. I started as a sports photographer. So way back in the day, I shot Michael Jordan when he played for the Chicago Bulls with a manual focus camera and film.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Detroit Pistons. I remember it clearly. And a lot has changed in those days. Technology, everything we use have changed. When I started becoming a wildlife photographer, it's actually very similar to sports. There's so much out of your control. There are things that you can set up, but you can also be very prepared for when the moment happens. And so I kind of came up with 4 lessons that I can apply to both being a wildlife photographer and also for sales. So in wildlife, you can't force a moment. I'm not going to tell the hippo or the rhinoceros or the elephant.
Look to the right. Yeah.
Smile.
So the best shots come from waiting, observing, looking for patterns, like letting things reveal itself. And so for salespeople, the fastest way to lose a deal is probably to rush it, right? So asking better questions, let the buyers show what their priorities are before you pitch something. So that patience really builds trust and maybe will help you, secure more deals. And that's what I find out in the field. I can't just rush it. The second is that preparation makes luck look easy. Right? Now we know this is true in all aspects of life, but I have great photos and people will look at them and say, oh my gosh, what a lucky shot. And I think there was very little luck involved, little bit, but very little, right? Great photos are not accidental. You study everything you can, you look at the behavior, you consider your lens, you set everything up so that if that elephant happens to walk through the frame right as the sun is setting and you get the shot, you were there, right? So in sales, no one wings it, right? The research of the account, anticipating objections, knowing the buyer's world, really, when opportunity shows up, it looks effortless, but it isn't. And that's similar in photography. The third is adapting when the shot changes. So you've got all this idea, you've done all the preparation, and then something changes. You're so ready for that moment to just all come together, and it doesn't. And it could be the weather, it could be the light, it could be the animal that didn't follow the script, which happens most of the time. So you have to adapt to the situation. Sometimes it's moving around to a different location, getting a different view. Same as in sales, right? So buyers pivot, budgets change, stakeholders appear out of nowhere. So it's really about kind of thinking through, how am I going to adjust if the situation changes, instead of just sticking with the script with it. And then the fourth is respecting the subject and not controlling it. So obviously I am not going to control the crocs that are out there or the hippos. I can't control the environment. And really, there's moments that happen that are purely authentic. And you can tell in the images I've done. There are people out there that do other things, so they call it baiting, so that they can get this moment. But a true wildlife photographer doesn't do that. You have to be authentic in how you shoot, and it comes across in your images. And in selling, it isn't about controlling the conversation. It's about respecting the buyer's reality, right? So when customers come to feel understood rather than managed, they open up and things happen.
Wow. This is good stuff. I got to zero in on the P word that's just near and dear to me, is this preparation. And I've always said this, and I really believe this, that the more prepared you are in sales, the more prepared you are for the unexpected, or because I'm a baseball just junkie, the more that something gets thrown out from you from right field. Is this preparation allows this to happen, because I do know this: expect the unexpected, and the more prepared you are for it, the more confidence you have to be able to address it.
100%. And I'm going to add a layer to that. When it comes in from left field or right field, unexpected happens, sometimes you don't have success, right?
Yeah.
And so what combines with the preparedness is also being aware of the situation, of like the gain, the learning, something that you just got that you didn't have before. And that happens to me every day, not just as a photographer or as a CEO of a company that I own, or in my life as a keynote speaker, but also on the tennis court. I was at a tennis camp, and I was doing everything really well. And then all of a sudden my backhand was gone. And that's my best stroke. And I hit ball after ball into the net. And I stopped, and the pro came over to me and he said, sometimes when this happens, you just have to pause, reflect on it, and adjust. Now that seems like that's the lesson I got. But the lesson I actually took away was, if I hadn't hit the ball into the net so many times, I never would have learned the lesson. And when you are out in sales and something comes in from left field and you are prepared, what you can do is you can look at the lesson of like what's working and what's not, and appreciate that now the growth that you're going to have in that situation. So you're not only prepared, but that left field is actually going to make things even better for you, because now you are going to be able to compete in a way that others can't, because you've now experienced that.
So powerful. Hey, Sheri, I'm curious, what was the most challenging animal that you have photographed or have yet to photograph, because it's so elusive?
And you can't say a salesperson.
Okay, take that off the list. So I share a story about a failure that I had, and it was up in the Arctic. And I was on the northernmost boat in the world, and It was minus 40 degrees. So for your listeners who prefer Celsius, it was also minus 40 degrees.
Right, thinking about equal at that point. That's cold.
Nothing worked. I actually I thought prepared, right? I had battery powered gloves and 5 layers, but my gloves were too big and I couldn't work the camera. The polar bear had walked up to our boat because they had these regulations that you can't go up to a polar bear. I know you're thinking, why would you walk up to a polar bear? But you have to wait for a polar bear to approach you. And so I'm sitting there, the polar bear's there, and my fingers froze because I couldn't wear my gloves, and my brain was freezing. And I swear the polar bear was probably embarrassed for me. I have 1,000.
Like, come on, take the picture.
I'm right here. I'm waiting, and I missed the shot. But the interesting part of that story was there was another photographer with me. Her name's Rennie. And Rennie, the first day of our trip, she got a really bad cut on her leg. She tripped on something and gashed her leg. And that meant that she couldn't stand very long. So she had all the challenging conditions, and she couldn't stand. She couldn't move around the boat, but she got the shot of the trip. And when I reflected on this, and we've talked about this many times since, she said she did something different than I did on that trip. She said, what can I do with what I have? Whereas I kept trying to think differently and try something differently. And I say she worked within the boundary. She says, I can only stand for a limited amount of time. I can't go lower deck. I only have this lens. It's really cold. That having those constraints in place gave her better clarity and focus. And she got the shot where I felt scrambled. I felt all over the place because I didn't have the same kind of focus she had. So, and that was not set up. You had no idea that that's my failure story, but it's one of my favorites because I do reflect on how I missed the shot because I just didn't have that clarity.
Oh, this is so good. By the way, Sheri, thank you for hanging out with us. I think there's a great question that I think everybody could ask themselves, and it's what Sheri just shared. What could I do with what I have? That's a powerful question I want all sales managers and salespeople to ask when they're out in the field. Great, great, great question.
Thanks. And now, if we have time, I do have the success story, the flip side of that.
Yes.
And it was on the other pole. So I was down in Antarctica. And this is also, to me, a great analogy for sales. I am in a boat with 5 other people. We're in a Zodiac boat. And facing us is another Zodiac boat with another 6 people. And somebody has a drone. And what's happening is that there are a dozen humpback whales, and they're all creating this circling motion and bringing fish to the surface. But there's so many of them that no one's ever seen this many in one place. The opportunity seems unbelievable. And from up above, the shot from up above from the drone, spectacular. But from our vantage point, it's just chaos. And everybody's trying to get the same thing. We're all trying to get the same shot. So I sat there and said, what's the risk if I turn away? Is there anything else out here? And so I'm looking around the boat and I see one whale in the distance. And it's something that everyone else is overlooking because the action is in front of us. But I assessed the risk and I said, if I get that shot, I'm getting the shot everyone else is getting, and I have tons of competition. I may miss this one, but that's actually where the opportunity is the greatest. So I started photographing that one lone whale, and we all get back onto the ship and everyone's looking through their photos. And I have the shot of the trip from that trip. And it's a beautiful shot. It's on my website. It's a whale tail going up with all the water dripping down, and it's spectacular. But I never would have gotten that shot if I hadn't just taken that risk, knowing the boundaries, that what happens if I don't go after what everybody else goes after. And I thought about that. I'm like, you know what? I don't gain anything here, but there may be opportunity in the overlooked places.
So good.
So great. Sheri, thank you so much for sharing time. I know our listeners are thinking what I'm thinking is, where do I see these pictures and how do I get more Sheri Jacobs in my life?
Oh, thank you. So you can go to sherijacobs.com, and right on the top of the page, there is a link to Sheri's photos where you can see the images. You could also buy the book, The Unexpected Power of Boundaries, and that's available as well.
We'll put all the links in the show notes. Sheri, thank you so much for sharing your time and your heart and your stories with us today. This has been fantastic.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Oh,
Awesome.
we appreciate
you. Larry, what a phenomenal conversation. There's so many moments to reflect on and think about those lessons at the end. But I want to go back to the beginning around boundaries and just think about that concept. And I want to challenge everyone to go, how can you apply that, you're probably going to want to grab Sheri's book. Take this, and we need to think as leaders and sales professionals what we can do to apply this. I think there's a lot of upside potential here.
Absolutely. I just think of all the chaos that could be removed, Daryl, if we just set up boundaries. They don't have to be big, fancy, right? Fort Knox type boundaries, just some small boundaries that everyone adheres to, that we can massage them when needed. But, I'm just saying, without boundaries comes chaos. That's sales chaos, deal chaos. As a sales manager, working with your salespeople, chaos. Let's remove all of that with some simple boundaries.
That's right. Well, one of the boundaries we want to have you stay inside is stay as a Selling from the Heart listener, because we got great stuff coming up. I don't know if I pulled that together very well.
You tried, dude. It was a good try.
Hey, seriously, thank you. Thank you for everyone who's listening in. Thank you for everyone who's sharing this, leaving us reviews. This continues to grow. And you're not just listening to a show, you're part of a movement of authenticity and trust right here in this sales profession we all love.
Hey, we appreciate you. It was our promise, as I've said many, many times, this was many, many years ago, to bring you fresh ideas, new voices, maybe people you haven't heard of, all to help each and every one of you become better. So thank you for being a listener.
That's right. Until next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust. Recognize the unexpected power of boundaries, and most of all,
Sell from the heart.